Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, author Vivian E. Moore. Hope everyone had a great week, and I hope that you're having an even better weekend. All right, we're going to get straight to today's show. The title is, Oh, What a Tangled Web We Weave. And the topic is weaving story magic. All right, so stories don't start as masterpieces. They begin as loose threads, a character voice, a whispered idea, an image in the mind that refuses to go away. Writing is the art of taking those isolated strands and weaving them into something breathtaking and emotionally real. That's the true magic of storytelling, an intricate tapestry created one idea at a time. Okay, so let's talk about how do writers actually do that? Well, let's explore that creative weaving that turns all of those scattered concepts into captivating fiction. Okay, so it all begins with the threads, right? I remember my mother, she was an artist in her own right. She would sit down with needle and embroidery thread with a piece of cloth with an image that she had drawn on there, and she would sit there and she would weave for hours at a time until that image that she drew on that piece of fabric was completed and it made a complete picture. And that's what writers do when they begin with those threads, right? Because every story is built from all of those tiny elements, a character flaw or a desire or a fear or a problem just waiting to happen. You know, my mother's weaving on that cloth came from memories from her past, from her childhood, from things she remembered growing up, because she grew up in the country, in the South, and on a farm, no less. And so all of those things that she remembered from her childhood, she transcribed them to that piece of cloth, and then she embroidered them with that thread. So that is how stories are created, how the weaving begins, because writers, just like my mother, they collect all of these fragments like colorful yarn. And sometimes, you know, they have no idea how each piece will fit, but they know that it belongs, right? A character's fear, it might later spark the plot twist, right? We don't know until it happens. And so a seemingly small detail, it might become a deeper metaphor. Nothing is ever wasted, not even the messy parts, right? I would see my mother take that piece of thread that was probably a little bit too short for her to actually do anything with, but she would connect it with another strand of thread. And so, so that strand became stronger and longer, and she was able to do something with those messy parts, right? Okay. All right. So let's talk about the next thing, connecting those strands that I just mentioned that my mother would do. Because a single idea, it is not enough, right? Just like that little piece of thread was not enough for her to actually do something with until she connected it to another piece of thread, right? But that story magic, it happens when all of those ideas, they start intersecting, okay? So one idea becomes four, and then suddenly the story begins creating itself, Okay. So that's when a writer, that's when they realize that they are no longer just writing. They are weaving, right? So now let's talk about tying those knots on purpose. Okay. So my mother, in weaving that tapestry that she created, sometimes she would have to tie off knots, and it would not be on the side of the tapestry that would be presented for the viewers. It would be on the back side of it where no one could see it, right? So that's where she would do her tying off. It would be on the back side of it. And so with writing, we also tie those knots on purpose. Plot twists and emotional reveals, that moment where everything you thought you knew was wrong, right? So those are the knots in the narrative thread, okay? Because writers, they tighten that tension deliberately. It's expected. It's intentional. That's what we do. Because we need those conflicting goals. We need those misunderstood motives. We need all of those hidden thoughts and all of those opposing forces, because all of that is the joining of those threads together, the weaving of those threads and tying those knots on purpose, because we need to do that, because every knot pulls the reader deeper, right? It's not chaos. It just feels like it until that tapestry is complete. Okay, it's organized chaos, if you will. So now let's talk about how all of those layers make legends, right? So great stories, they just don't work on a single level. They unfold. A plot line is only one layer, right? We talked about those plot lines in an earlier episode. And then the others, they come from the theme, the emotion, the symbolism, the subplots, and all of that character growth that you need to propel that story forward, right? So the reader, they may not notice each of those threads, but they feel that full result just like a tapestry, right? That's the invisible magic. That's the part that they don't see. All that magic that is taking place behind the scenes, that is weaving that web of words together into a beautiful story tapestry. Okay. So now let's get to the art of revealing. At first, everything seems disconnected, right? It's like, maybe they've started here at the top part and we're still not getting it completely. We're not getting the full picture completely because there are a lot of things that are still happening behind the scenes that we can't see, but it's all coming together. It may seem disconnected at first, but it's coming together. And then midway through, all of those clues begin to echo, right? You start to see things that are like flashing before your eyes that's making you say, oh, okay, I see where you're going with this, right? And then by the end, every choice and every conflict and every moment suddenly makes sense. So that tapestry that has that the writer has been weaving is slowly coming into view. It is slowly making sense. That reveal is the moment that everything clicks. Is magic that only writing can deliver. Okay, because the reader doesn't just finish the story; they experience the weaving. Okay. They can't get an actual picture of all of that weaving that's taking place. But if you are an excellent writer, they can definitely see all of those details forming within their minds as you continue to weave that story, right? Because when the last sentence lands, what's left behind is more than a plot. It is transformation. It is discovery. It is connection. Okay. The writer, they weave stories together just like my mother did with those tapestries that she created. Okay. She had an idea, and that idea started with an image that was in her mind. Perhaps, again, it was something from her childhood or a story that she wanted to tell. Perhaps she couldn't put it into words, but she could definitely draw a picture of it. And then drawing that picture of it, she filled in all of the details, okay? And slowly but surely, all of that started to transform. And then as it transformed, you started to discover all of the things that she was trying to tell you with those threads, the weaving of the threads. And that's just how writers, we do the same thing. We may not do it on a tapestry made from cloth, but we most definitely do it on paper. We most definitely do it on the keyboard. We weave those stories, and we try to make sure that this story is discoverable, right? We don't want to leave you hanging. We don't want to leave you wondering. We want to make sure that everything that we have created makes sense, that it connects, right? That we're building onto something. We're building up to something. We want to make that story so detailed and so defined that there will be no way that you cannot see the full picture. That's what writers do. We weave webs. We use words to weave webs. That's our goal. That is our job as writers, to tell a story by weaving all those words together. Okay? Because again, the writer weaves, the reader unravels the story, right? And together they create meaning. That's the beauty of a story. And oh, what a tangled web we weave. And that is a privilege. It is to be the ones who are weaving it. Okay? What a privilege it is to be the ones that's weaving it. Okay? That's what I was trying to say. And I finally got it out. So forgive me for my tongue twister, because that was hard to get out, but I finally made it. Okay, guys. And I thank you so much for tuning in each week. I thank you for listening, for liking, for sharing. And if you haven't gone out to Podbean and actually like the show on there, you can definitely go to Spreaker, because it's available there as well. And just leave a comment, because that helps a lot. That builds my confidence in everything that I'm trying to do on a weekly basis. It helps me to know that you are listening and that you are liking what you're hearing. That is so important, for podcasters. This may be a small show, but even with a small show, it is doing big things, okay? It's reaching audiences, and that is the goal, is to reach each and every talent that is out there, whether you are a writer, whatever your artistry is. I want to make that connection with you, to reach across those lines, because, it is all relevant. No matter what type of artist you are, we may be talking books, but there are some of the points that I make that they cross over those lines, from writer to musician to actor to singer, whatever it is that you're trying to do. No matter what it is, you are still weaving words together to either to create a song or to create a picture, or whatever it is that you're doing. It all comes together in the end. All right. And as I always say before I end each and every show, remember to tell those who you care about the most how you feel about them today, because tomorrow is not promised. It may be the only chance you get to say it. And on that note, I love you. I hope you love me back. And until the next time you hear my voice, God bless you and goodbye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.